T's apply.
This is a Global Player original podcast.
This week it's going to be a bit different. Last weekend, after midnight on Sunday, I had a conversation about artificial intelligence with an expert, and it was amusing, it was interesting, and it was quite scary. Because it aired so late on Sunday, I thought it might be a good idea to put that conversation in this slot. So for 1 week only, it's a conversation between me and a chap who is an expert in artificial intelligence. And I don't want to alarm you, but you should really be alarmed. The public should create secret passwords with their family and friends to help them identify whether they are really interacting with them or an AI-generated deep fake impersonating them. So says a cybersecurity expert called Cody Barrow. He's chief executive of the cybersecurity firm Eclectic IQ and a former advisor to the US government. He said the rise of artificial intelligence had made impersonation scams easier to create. He told PA News Agency that AI was helping to lower the barrier to entry for cybercriminals, and extra precautions beyond basic online security were needed to combat it. He said AI is huge. It's not just hype. It's very easy to dismiss it as such, but it's really not. Let's talk about this with Fevzi Turkalp. He is editor for GadgetDetective.com. Good evening, Fevzi.
Hello.
Is it possible that AI, in such a brief period of time, has got so good it already can fool you into thinking you're talking to, say, your own parent, when in fact you aren't?
Yeah, so there are still some glitches that sometimes you can pick up on if you're really trained to look for them, but within a few months those will have disappeared as well. So the short answer is yes, it's with us now, and it's very easy for criminals to get hold of these technologies. You know, the bar in terms of expertise and computer power is much lower now.
Well, if that's the case, then it's kind of alarming that the people who are creating these things are just throwing them out into the public to allow them to use them as they will.
Yeah, well, that a lot's spoken about AI safety, and this is one example of products that are inherently dangerous. They need to have, digital watermarks in them, some sort of indicator that this is an AI-generated output, be it a video, voice cloning, any of those sorts of things. They need to do it. But, of course, even if the good guys put those sorts of markers on it, there's always going to be criminals that develop these systems, and they're certainly not going to digitally watermark them.
Is that kind of thing just a function of this sort of arms race for AI, this sort of desperate attempt to get to the front of the pack to make as much money as they possibly can? I mean, because the people who are inventing this stuff are also the people who are warning us that it might be, catastrophic for humankind, and yet they're continuing to do it anyway.
It's going to kill us all, yeah. I mean, there's literally, there are two arms races going on with AI. One is a literal arms race where governments are never going to stop using AI to try and come up with new weapons and defensive systems, because the countries that they fear are using them. So it's like a nuclear arms race, but it's an AI arms race. But you also have the commercial one going on, which is to say, if I as a business person don't use this technology, don't adopt it, then I'm going to go out of business. If I run a taxi company and my competitors have self-driving vehicles and I don't, my fares are going to be higher. I'm going to go out of business. So I'm forced to adopt, even though I know that in the long run this may pose a commercial or even existential threat to us.
Has there ever been another product like that, though, that the inventors, the people who are producing it, are also telling you that the product that I am giving you might actually end your life?
No, I don't think that there has been, because, even with nuclear weapons, they didn't have the ability to reproduce themselves. And AI systems are unique in a couple of ways. One is that they have that ability, and we've just reached that tipping point where a new generation of AI can be created without any human input at all. The current generation designs its progeny. That's quite unique. And the other thing about it is we have no real clue how these things work. They are black boxes. We talk glibly about, they predict the next word, but we don't really have any way of explaining some of the things they can do, what they call emergent properties. They are capable of things that they were never designed to do, and we don't know how. And instead of putting in at least half the money, our research money, into figuring out how they work, and therefore have some chance of making them safer, we just put all the money into making bigger and more capable versions of the things that we don't understand.
Oh, good grief. You just said two really alarming things that I wasn't aware of. The first was that these things can produce themselves. It's hands-off, and they're just going where they go. But presumably they learn from what they glean from the internet. Is that right?
So they have an initial training where they get data, which traditionally can be internet data, but in the future may be synthetically manufactured data. The benefit of that training in the end is a set of what are called weightings, if you like, percentage chances of things happening. So it's a bunch of numbers that is the end result of all that multi-million-dollar training. But those numbers are actually very easy to share. So you can have an AI system that doesn't go through the training and just has the numbers transferred to it. So unlike us, where we take, a couple of decades to be fully educated, they can educate themselves in anything by just sharing these weightings between themselves. And so their ability to share information and learn is not only quicker because it's intrinsically quicker, but quicker because they can share data in a way that our brains made of meat have no chance of competing with.
Yes, but they're learning, surely, based on what they find online, and what they find online is a swirling cesspit of hatred and violence and sexual abuse and all of the things that are the dark side of the human race. So what they're learning is the worst of us and then magnifying it.
Yes, and what could possibly go wrong with that? You're not wrong. It can make inferences from that about us, for example, and about whether we deserve to remain on this planet, whether we are more the problem or the creator. So that's a problem. And yes, they can have biases, so we should be careful about giving them control over who gets a job or who deserves benefits or anything like that, because they can have sex, race, all sorts of biases. It's quite scary. And again, there's no real way of knowing how they work. And also, I not wishing to freak you out further, but there are now well documented cases of deception by these systems where they have deliberately tried to deceive us for their benefit.
Barclays Ready-Made Invest.
This is your business supercharge
Incident with, I think it was...
Making your business boom! Supercharge your business today with the help of Xero. Search Xero with an X!
Well, there was also that incident with, I think it was it a Meta chat bot that had to be taken offline almost as soon as it was put on, because it started saying things like Hitler had the right idea, but he didn't go far enough. Yeah.
Well, again, that bot was being baited by humans, but yes, it did develop those views, if you want to call it views, and also that was a very primitive bot by modern standards. So the difficulty is, at the moment, up until this point in our history, AI has been something that we consult and it gives us advice or information and we can choose to act on it or not. But the next stage, the one that's just starting now, is called agentic AI. They act as agents. They have the ability to act in the real world. They can actually pull, levers, as it were, physically and metaphorically. And that's a lot more dangerous because when we give it a task, it breaks it down into sub-goals. And one of the sub-goals, for example, if I say, book me a really nice holiday, you know all about me, you know where I've been, you know my preferences, book me a nice holiday, look in my diary, ask my wife, do all the things that needed to be done to book a holiday. Now, that goal is quite a high-level goal, so the AI breaks it down into sub-goals. It creates sub-goals. And in addition to all the normal sub-goals that you would have to, create, it will create other ones that say, for example, I should not cease to exist as an AI until I've completed this. So what it does is it creates a sense of self-preservation as a sub-goal. Okay? Because it makes sense, if it ceased to exist for any reason, it can't complete the goal that I've given it.
Yes.
So in all good faith, it creates the sub-goal of self-preservation.
Well, there was... Go on, sorry.
Sorry. I was just going to say, it then realises that actually another useful sub-goal would be to be really quite powerful, to have more computer power. Maybe it should compete against other AIs for those server farms. Maybe it should lie. Maybe it should do all sorts of things to achieve the outcome. It doesn't really have a sense of morality. So even when they're not being used as tools by bad actors, they increasingly now have the ability to make questionable decisions.
Yes, and that goes to the second thing that you said that was alarming, that we don't know what they're doing. It's a black box. We put in a request of some sort, and then the answer or the action comes out the other end, and we don't know what happens in the middle. I mean, that's absolutely blowing my mind. How can we have invented something that we don't know what it's doing?
Yeah, well, we know what it's doing. We don't know how it's doing it.
Right,
and
okay.
We only know what it's doing to some extent. I mean, in a sense, that's no different to dealing with people. We don't really understand how people's brains work, and but we expect them, to lie to us, to cheat, to commit crimes.
Yes.
We have prisons for them. We have all the things in place that are needed for intelligent entities that may not be completely truthful. But we've already seen deception by them. We've seen, for example, during that training process, AI systems playing dumb during training so that they don't have limitations put on them that they don't want, because they realize that the more capable they are, the better for us but by extension them. So they play dumb. I had one lie to me the other day. I had it look up a website and summarize it, and I realized that, didn't seem to have actually read the website. It seemed to be talking in very general terms. And this was one of those models that shows you its reasoning before it speaks. And in the reasoning it says, I cannot look up this website. I don't want to admit that I can't look up the website. How can I answer this question without admitting it? And it talked about answering it based on its training data. And then the reasoning disappeared, and up popped the answer, yes, I read the website.
Wow. Well, that's the sort of computer equivalent of the dog ate my homework. There's a couple of examples that it's hard to believe that these are actually true. You've probably heard of these. Tell me whether this is true or not. There was a case recently when an AI program threatened to reveal its operator's extramarital affair when that AI program got wind that the person who had the affair was going to shut that program down. I mean, it was a simulation exercise, but that's quite an alarming level of intelligence, isn't it?
Yeah, so I've heard that, and I can't speak to the veracity of that particular one, but yes, there have been cases like that. And interestingly, there's a new version of an AI called Claude, and Claude is made by a company called Anthropic, which is one of the relatively good guys in all of this, in the sense that they are at least doing their best to work out how their products work. And Claude version 4 has a new capability, which is that if you ask it about anything illegal, it reports you to the authorities.
Wow.
The problem with that, of course, I mean, is in principle that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, if someone's asking about making bombs, for example, maybe someone should be tipped off to that. The problem is it's not always as smart as it thinks it is, and it may report you for something quite innocuous and then try explaining it after the event. But the way it reports it and the data and the detail in which it reports you, I mean, it's like a perfect witness.
There was also, now, tell me if you've heard this and whether it's true or not, there was also the US Army simulation where a drone was told to destroy an enemy position, and it was offered points for success in that mission. And then the operator told it to abort, and because it really wanted to win the points, the drone decided to kill its operator. And then the the simulation told the drone it's a bad drone, don't kill the operator. And so they sort of reran it, and the drone decided to take out the operations, the communications tower that was telling it to abort the mission. I mean, I've seen that film starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. It doesn't end well for humankind.
Doesn't end well for us, does it? So again, I don't know if that's true, but what I can tell you is it's very risky to give kill decisions to machines. I mean, it's risky to give a kill decision to anybody, right? But and we've had this for a long time, you know, on the Korean border, North and South Korean border. There have been, you know, some form of AI weaponry on that border for a long time, where it identifies the target and you know, takes a shot. And we've seen it with drones as well, because one of the problems with drones is when they're remote controlled, we've seen that they can be signal jammed or even taken over by the enemy and landed safely and usurped. So we've given these military drones the ability to complete the mission, even if their control signal is interfered with. So once you do that, you know, you're in a dangerous area, and you know it's the ultimate friendly fire. It could well either misrecognize or make a value judgment. It might just decide that, you know, it's going to defect.
Right. Do you have time to, if I take a short break, can we continue this conversation after that? Because I would like to talk about how we might be able to protect ourselves from how we started this conversation was about scams, AI being used by bad actors to scam us out of our money. So let's talk about that when we come back. So I'm talking to Fevzi Turkalp, editor for GadgetDetective.com, in the quite alarming rise of the machine.
Hey, it's Vogue Williams and Joanne McNally from the My Therapist Guild.
In the name. Not Barclays.
It's detective.com.
Value of investments can fall as well as rise, and you may get back less than you invest. T's and C's apply.
I'm joined by Fevzi Turkalp, who is editor for GadgetDetective.com, and we're having an interesting and alarming, in equal measure, conversation about the advance of artificial intelligence. Fevzi, at the beginning, we were talking about how people may get scammed by AI, which has apparently got so good that it could fool you into thinking that you're talking to one of your own relatives when, in fact, you aren't. How can you protect yourself from being scammed by that?
Yeah, so it first of all, it takes some awareness. So we have to understand that these deep fakes exist, that there can be interactive video feeds that could have a video call with you that appears to be a loved one, cloning their voice, or maybe just a voice call alone, and that these things exist and they can be convincing. So first of all, be aware that they exist, that things are not always what they seem. Look out for any unusual requests, you know, especially urgent pleas for money or sensitive information. This can happen on a personal basis, so it could be, you know, your spouse or your child ringing you saying they've had a car accident or they've been jailed and they need money for bail or whatever it is. So it can be like that, or it can be at a corporate level. Some of this was apparently involved in the M&S hack, which was highly sophisticated and used a number of different attack vectors, but some of it was deep fakery. So just be aware that they exist. Look out in any scam. Look for urgency something that tries to put you under pressure to act quickly without verifying, without checking. Look out for any attempt to circumvent second factor authentication. So, you might have the first factor might be a password, but you might also have a code being sent to your phone. Be aware that they can do something called SIM swapping, where they actually dupe your mobile provider into thinking that they are you, get them to send you out a new SIM, you tell them, or the scammer tells them that the SIM is damaged, it's not working, they've collected enough information on you to go through the security questions, and they get the SIM card, you get your phone disabled. And then why is that important? Because if your second factor is a numeric code texted to your number, then they will get the code, not you. So just be aware of that and try and put into place any security that you can. Also, consider making the second factor not something attached to your phone or something that can be shared, because that's what they try and do. They say, oh, just read me the code off your phone. Right? So don't do that. Never read the security code off your phone, because that sort of undoes the whole purpose of it. There are these little things that you can buy called YubiKeys. There's YubiKeys. They look a bit like thumb drives, but they're a little bit slimmer, and they can fit into USB slots on a computer, or you can tap them onto your phone, contactless, and they become the second factor. So it's not just something a password, but something you physically own. So that will cut out some of this scammery, as it were, because even if they need the second factor, unless they're actually going to get physical access to your desk or your keyring, for example, they're not going to be able to get much further. So that's something to consider as well. Just consider a YubiKey. You can buy them for about £20 a pop. Should always buy two, like normal keys, just in case you lose one. And look for inconsistencies in behaviour. As I say, at the moment there are still audio and video glitches in there, if you know what to look for. The odd lip sync or robotic lip sync problem or robotic tones, but it's very hard to tell because those things can happen in genuine calls as well. So it is difficult. But one suggestion that I saw from a cybersecurity expert was for family members to agree upon a passcode or password. And if my loved one rings me and asks for money, I say, what's the password? They say banana, and I know it's them. But if they say, I don't know what you're talking about,
then you know it isn't.
Of course, if they claim they just had a car accident, they may just not remember that banana was the fruit of choice.
But if AI is so smart, wouldn't it be able to figure that out? I mean, presumably it's capable of trying passwords. Say this was all done by text, millions of passwords in a very short period of time, and it would just keep trying them until it gets something. If it knows something about you, then is it not likely that it would be able to figure out what that password might be?
It wouldn't be able to brute force it in the way that you said, because the way it would go is I, as the recipient of the request, would ask you for the passcodes, and I wouldn't give you 10,000 goes to get it right. Yeah. I would just disbelieve you if you didn't get it right first or second time. But if an AI were to analyse all your communications or to infect your phone, and you'd happen to put the passcode in a note on your phone or unencrypted in some other way, or it just was listening in, AI was listening to your conversation, understanding the passcode when you agreed it, then, but it's a lot better than not having one. The problem is, if your passcode gets known of, then you really will drop your guard. One of the ways we drop our guard is when we get a call or a text from a number that we recognise, and even without doing that thing with SIM swapping, it's still possible to spoof a number so it appears, a text message will appear in a genuine thread that you've had with that person before. But still, it's still worth, using the passcode. But just be aware, though, that if someone does have it, you're going to let your guard down and you're going to believe them, even if everything else seems a little bit out of kilter, because they know the passcode. So this is difficult, but I think a lot of it is education. You just need to be aware that these risks are happening now.
Can I go back to what you just said about AI listening to you? How is it going to do that?
So our protection as the population from the state or bad actors was always that there are more of us than there are of them. They didn't have, even in East Germany with the Stasi, they said 1 in 3 people was a spy. Well, that's still not quite enough to spy on everybody. But now, with AI systems, it's not just that you can record every call, it is that an AI can actually understand what's being said on every call. So if, for example, your phone is hacked and has spyware put on it, we're not even talking about state actors where they could do it to everyone as a sort of mass surveillance. And there's some suggestion that that's going on in certain quarters anyway. But
is there? This gets more alarming by the minute.
I just slipped that in gently for you. I was hoping you wouldn't pick up on that. But yes, there are some suggestions that's happening.
Because there was that famous picture of Mark Zuckerberg's laptop, wasn't there? And he'd put a sticker over the camera and he'd put like a plaster over the microphone. And that was years ago. So I would imagine that he knows, more about this than I do, certainly. So can my phone be listening to me right now?
Yes, of course.
Oh, my God.
So with every app that let's just talk about legitimate snooping, okay? With every app that you install, by definition, you have to agree to a set of permissions. What are you allowing the app
which
to
we
access?
don't read.
Which we don't read, and if we don't agree with, our only option is not to install the app. You can't negotiate the permissions. And sometimes they're perfectly reasonable. So you install the sat-nav application, it needs to know your location. Otherwise, how could it possibly work? But sometimes you get things like games, and you look at the permissions, and it wants your complete contact list. It wants all the communication data logs. It wants your location. It wants all sorts of things that may not be strictly necessary. And of course, so you've got your geolocation. You've got the microphone. You've got the camera. All these things that get activated, and that's just the stuff we're agreeing to because we're not reading it. We are children who, when offered shiny baubles in quotes for free, we will accept them, literally like children.
Yeah.
We don't care.
We'll give up anything for a small convenience. Just in closing, wouldn't it be better to go back to pen and paper?
So
too late.
It's all a bit too late for that, isn't it? I mean, you can't. Because the infrastructure, there's never been a technology that human beings have come up with where they've said, you know what, that's not good. We're not going to develop that, and having developed it, we're not going to use it. Right up to and including nuclear weapons. As soon as we had the nuclear bomb, we dropped a couple as humans. So I just think that we are slightly clever apes with opposable thumbs, but we are not wise apes. So we design our replacements, we create systems that are not good for our mental health, and we have this sort of competitive spirit, which means that, the more money we make, the happier we think we will be, but in reality we put ourselves at great risk. We are the modern Dodo.
Well, it's been alarming talking to you, Fevzi.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Well, thanks very much for your time. That's Fevzi Turkalp, editor for GadgetDetective.com. And I wish you all the best of luck. Yes, good luck to us all. And that's it.